The Detroit Tigers would lose their first series in May to the Seattle Mariners over the weekend, but did salvage a win on Sunday in a very, very eventful weekend for this baseball team. We're going to talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, May 15th, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All righty. Well, first off, happy Mother's Day to all the great and wonderful moms out there in the Detroit Tigers community. You are the best. We are discussing the Tigers dropping 2 of 3 to the Seattle Mariners. Sunday's win was huge. Really want to stress that. We'll get into that a little bit later, but not getting swept at home is awesome. So we'll take it. We'll take Sunday's victory. The first 2 days we won't take. That was absolutely atrocious baseball in nearly every single facet of the game. That was awful, horrendous. If they end up looking how they looked in those 2 games for any significant period of time going forward, this thing is going to go off the rails pretty quickly. But again, bouncing back and winning on Sunday was huge to prevent that, I think. I think that this is a series which 2019 or last year or whatever, Tigers teams tend to spiral. And I really can appreciate the fact that they at least buckled down and got a win on Sunday in a 5-3 victory. But again, those first 2 games were awful. Friday, I was at that ball game. That was a dreadful performance by nearly everyone that took the field, outside of Riley Green, who was a star throughout the entire weekend. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But Matt Boyd started that game pretty much zero command or feel for the zone. Started off the game with a 4-pitch walk, if I remember correctly. So that's not great. One of his shortest outings of his entire career. Not very good. And the offense really had zero rhythm. They were getting some base runners on. They had Jake Rodgers with the power, but they were way behind. And it just never really threatened to climb back into the ball game, despite getting some base runners there in the middle of the game. Saturday was a absolutely horrific offensive performance. I don't even really have too much else to say in that regard. That was absolutely dreadful. I think you had 3 base runners the entire ball game. 3 base runners, no walks, all hits. 3 base runners in the course of a 9-inning game. Not going to win too many games that way, I'll tell you what. And Alex Faedo had a quality start in that ball game. The fastball slider duo I thought was pretty good. Had several swings and misses. I think he had 7 or 8 whiffs on the slider alone. He looked pretty solid. The home run to Kelenic was, that's a ball. Like, that was a fastball up and in, so far up and in that it was a ball high. And he still just turned on it, and it barely got over the wall, like barely. So that it is what it is. The Teoscar Hernandez home run, I think that's who it was. That one was a absolute missile. So whatever, mistake pitches happen. But over the course of the game, like, he really only made one mistake pitch that cost him, and that was the second home run. Because like the Kelenic one again wasn't like some horrific pitch. So and he buckled down and put together a quality start. So I liked what I saw from him there. A team that really needed innings out of starting pitching as well after what happened on Friday. And little did they know what would happen on Sunday. Kind of not a great deep performance by Joey Wentz on Sunday either. But they did win the ball game. Like I said at the beginning, like, not getting swept is so important. Obviously, you want to win series, but going from, like, think of it this way, okay? This is how my brain works. If you get swept in a 3-game set, you are 3 wins behind the other team, right? 3 wins to your 0. if you steal a win at the end, no matter how bad the first two ball games were, which again, this weekend they were awful, if you steal a win on the finale, you're only one win behind the opponent over the course of that 3-game set. So going from 3 games back to your opponent to 1 game back it cannot be stressed how massive that is. So every single game matters. Not getting swept is so important over the course of a season. We've talked before, like earlier, I think 2 weeks ago, we kind of had that conversation, right? Where we had that discussion just about, look, when if you just removed some of the sweeps that have happened, the Tampa series, the Red Sox series, the Orioles, if you just give us one win in those, like you would have been about 500 before the Mariners series, right? So not getting swept, I know it sounds kind of like the bar is on the floor, and to some extent it is, and that's, I'm not trying to tell you it's not, but over the course of a season, those add up. So I'm gladly gonna take Sunday's game, even though I'm never gonna take the first 2 games ever again. Those were awful. Sunday was also a RISP disaster. RISP has been the talking point of this season on this show, very much so. We talked. What did I was that last week? I named the show just RISP over and over and over again. This team has had some real woes when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position, and Sunday was no different. 2 for 13 with runners in scoring position on Sunday. And even when they did score, they're 2 runs late, right? It was a 3-3 ball game. They go up 5-3 and they win. They didn't have any hits. They had first and second with leadoff walk. Okay. Then they get another, what was that, a single? I'm trying to remember how the other run, I think it was a single. Was that Jonathan Scope single up the middle? So then you have first and second, no outs. They scored 2 runs, did not record a single hit. They had a fly out to move a runner over. They had a strikeout. Then they had 2 walks and a hit by pitch in that inning. Just unbelievable stuff, truly. So that has not changed. But again, I'll take a win any way I can get it. I do think that that's a really important bounce back victory, especially going into an off day as well. And, series finale, not getting swept, going into a Pittsburgh team who is struggling mightily in the month of May. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But yeah, just same old offensively-ish. They've gotten a little bit more of a power stroke this month, but we still have seen some really bad runners in scoring position games. And then Wentz started on Sunday. Like I said, not great yet again. Thought he looked pretty sharp in the first inning and most of the second. And then the third was an absolute disaster. We've talked a lot about Joey Wentz and the snowball effect that he has and the tendency he has to let 1, 2 hits become 3, 4, 5 hits. He didn't even get crushed. It wasn't like he was giving up a ton of home runs. He just kept giving up single after single after single after single, and it wouldn't stop. So they pulled him. That's also a situation where I think if this was, I don't know, they played 5 days in a row, a week straight, something like that, no off days, and no off days again for the next couple of days, they probably or not, maybe let's not the right word, but they probably leave Wentz out there. But I think they had the luxury of an off day 2 days ago and an off day tomorrow and an off day on Thursday, right? They're in a week where they have 3 off days in a 7-day stretch, and they're right about at the halfway mark of that. So they kind of had the luxury a little bit to pull him, not feel bad or worry about it at all, go to the bullpen very early on and try to salvage this ball game. An AJ Hinch masterclass managerial game Sunday was for that reason. And they did just that and came back and won the ball game. So very nice there. That's kind of like the general recap of all 3 games, just my quick hitting reaction to all 3 ball games. We're going to go a little more in depth and talk about the bigger storylines from the weekend, the big individual performances from the weekend and whatnot. We will do that right after I tell you all about our friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors with eBay Guaranteed Fit. You can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around as well. Just add your ride to the My Garage and look for the green check to know a part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Segment 2 here, Locked On Tigers. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I greatly appreciate all of y'all, especially the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow, obviously. Tomorrow, we're going to take a look at some of the offseason moves that this team didn't make last offseason, whether it was not re-signing certain players, whether it was free agents we talked about that we wanted to acquire maybe on this show in December and January and didn't, and just kind of take a look at where those players are now and what they're doing. Because I think that we're starting to get to a point in the season where you're starting to see people's true colors. A lot can happen where I'm not saying that these are going to be everybody's final lines or anything. Long season. Baseball is beautiful because of that. But I think we can kind of get a general sense over a month into the season. So that's what tomorrow's show is going to be. Off day episode. Then we'll preview Pittsburgh as well. Let's get back to talking about this weekend, though. Something came up this weekend. It didn't really, that's a horrible way of wording that. This weekend made me realize something. That's the way I want to word this. And it's something that I did not shed nearly enough light on, and that's entirely my fault. But it's something that after realizing it now, I am absolutely terrified of. And that this team has zero starting pitching depth. It's not that like I know all the names and we've talked about all the names and we've discussed on this show in the offseason and spring training, the early part of the year, whatever, all of the options they had at starting pitching. But this staff got really thin really, really quickly. And I didn't realize the extent of it, I guess is the way I want to word it, until this weekend. Eduardo Rodriguez has been fantastic, okay? And he's been going deep into ball games. I think it's safe to say you can rely on him to not necessarily keep up a 0.43 ERA pace that he's been on the last 6 starts, but you can rely on him to go 6 or 7 most times out there and keep you in ball games, right? Outside of that, it's a little nerve-wracking. You have Michael Lorenzen, whose last 2 starts have been really good. 7 innings, 1 run ball, and 7 innings shutout ball, I believe, in his last 2 outings. Really, really solid. They're going to need that, okay? So even if you kind of chalk Lorenzen up as like, hey, this is looking like a really good signing, I like what I see out of this dude, I'm okay with him being like the number 2 starter from here on out. That's great. After that, it's Matt Boyd, who has an ERA approaching 6 at the moment and has not gone deep into a ball game really yet this entire season. Alex Faedo, who is far from proven that he can go in consistently into the 6th or later at the major league level. And then Joey Wentz, who has just been a complete roller coaster this year. And I really like Joey Wentz, and I still think he can be a solid kind of back end, maybe at best middle rotation starter for a competitive ball club. But right now, in his current stage in development, it's been super hit or miss. You get one outing where he goes 6 and gives up 1 run, and then another 2 outings after that in a row are less than 3 innings pitched. So, like, that's your starting rotation. And it's just like when this team was rolling and it was like, okay, here's an Erod start, win. Here's Michael Lorenzen going 7 innings, win. Now we go into Seattle with Boyd, Faedo, Wentz. Anytime that 3 is going to be the 3 to kick off a series, you really need to win the Matt Boyd game. Because the odds of you going into a team as good as the Seattle Mariners are, which I know their offense has been a little shaky to start off the year, and their record, like they're just barely over 500 now after this series. But like, if you go after playoff caliber teams or competitive teams, that's a tall task to win a series when those are your probable pitchers. And if Wentz struggles a lot more, or if Faedo never finds his footing, again, really solid start on Saturday, not trying to take away from what he did, but if he can't consistently do that, or if Matt Boyd just doesn't find it, then you're in trouble, because there is no one after these five in the rotation waiting in the wing. Spencer Turnbull, we'll talk about in a second. That's a whole different thing. That's absolutely mind-boggling to me. So you have him when he's healthy again, or back in the majors, whatever comes first, I guess. But waiting in AAA, you have pretty much no one that's like major league ready, chomping at the bit to get called up. Like Zach Logue is starting games down there. He has an ERA over 4. Reese Olson has an ERA of dang near 10 at the moment. Brennan Hannafy has an ERA of almost 5 and a whip over 1.5. Like, I mean, Garrett Hill started some games. I don't think the team wants to do that based on what they saw in his first stint. And then that's kind of it. Ashton Goudeau, I guess, but like he has an ERA over 6. You're in trouble. Like that's my point. That you Alex Faedo was not supposed to be a starting pitcher in May. And so you're already kind of have your back up against the wall. Manning either needs to come back, but he got moved to the 60 a while ago, obviously, or Spencer Turnbull needs to come back and be pre-injury Spencer Turnbull. Because if neither of those things happen, this could be a real slippery slope. I'm not saying it will. This coaching staff, this pitching staff has done miraculous things. They have done wonders. Chris Fetter's amazing at his job. The other staff around him, Nieves and Lund, are great at their jobs. I have faith in them. But it's just getting really thin really quickly, and you're, knock on wood, one more injury away from I don't even know what. I genuinely don't know where you even go if one more person was to drop out of the rotation. So that's just something that really came to my attention in bright flashing lights over the weekend throughout this series, and that I wanted to address. The other thing was the Spencer Turnbull situation, which is mind-boggling to me. Spencer Turnbull, we talked about last week, got demoted to AAA. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm in quotes. Demoted to AAA. Also, shout out eBay Motors, whose ad has been up there for the entirety of segment 2. Demoted to AAA, option to AAA. Then over the weekend, turns out he's not. And he's on the Major League IL is where he's put. So he's put on the injured list at the Major League level. Those reports happen like a few hours apart, and I'm very confused, as is the rest of the fan base. Everybody's chiming in on their opinion of what's happening. Then there's a report that from one of the beat writers, I think it was Stephen Hagen, that said that there was a conversation with Harris and Turnbull about getting optioned, and then like a day later or a couple days later, then there was a phone call about a neck injury, and they decided to put him on the IL instead. Then, a little bit after that comes out, we learn that Spencer Turnbull has switched agents to Scott Boras now representing him. And then Scott Boras is asked about the Spencer Turnbull situation. And he basically just has a quote. This is also definitely via Stephen Hagen of The Athletic, where he says, it was a really simple process. I got the Turnbull's injury information, the doctor's notes and all that. We went over it. We went over it with the Tigers, and we both agreed that staying in the majors, but going on the IL was the right decision. Is that not just wild to anybody else? Have you ever seen that before? Because I certainly can't recall a time when I have seen that. That's mind blowing to me. And like I don't know anything y'all don't. I only have the and I don't have like an inside track on this one. Just whatever public information has been given out over the weekend is all I know too. But like I'm as this is unfolding, my jaw's on the floor. And I know it's like it's a not very good baseball team on a pitcher that has not been very good this year, and and not a huge market and whatnot. But I I don't know. Like I have to imagine if this happens to like someone on the Yankees that everyone knows about this. I was so intrigued and so fascinated by the unfolding of those events, and I am even more fascinated in what's going to happen after he's not injured anymore. He'll get rehab starts for sure because it sounds like the Tigers wanted to demote him anyway. But if they don't go well like that, then what happens? It is fascinating. It is so fascinating. I don't even know what to call it. Just the intricacies of that entire story and the way in which they were released to the public and unfolded could not have been wilder. So that's something I wanted to address too. Let's get into some of the individual performances over the weekend, some more storylines to keep eyes on. But first, these messages. What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Third and final segment here, Locked On Tigers. So going over the weekend, Tigers dropped 2 of 3 to the Mariners. Talked a lot about the bigger storylines that came out of the weekend. Let's talk about some individual performances. Riley Green has been phenomenal. This is dating back to before, like the entire month of May, really. He has been absolutely amazing. His batting average after a 3-hit day on Sunday, a multiple hit day on Friday as well, is now 279, and his OPS is up to 727. He is swinging a very hot stick. Is pulling the ball in the air, which is absolutely phenomenal. He's hitting a lot of doubles now, which he didn't have a double for the first like 5 weeks of the season, and now he has 4 or 5 on the year. Really, really solid stuff. He had a single the opposite way on Sunday, and then a pull side, ball in the air. Like just really, really starting to figure it out. The swing has been great. And yeah, I everybody loves what they're seeing. But he has quickly emerged as this team's best hitter, probably, certainly in the month of May. But yeah, over the course of the season, I think we all like what we're seeing, and we would like it to be sustainable. And based on, again, like before, it was kind of same old, like, oh, we'd get on a hot streak, but that's because he had 3 seeing eye singles on the ground to the pull side. Now he's actually lifting the ball all over the field and still doing damage the opposite way as well. I think he just looks like a completely different hitter. He's still going to strike out at a decent clip. But I have really, really liked what I've seen from Riley Green over the last couple of weeks. And I see nothing that would lead me to believe that that production, while he's not going to have like 1,000 OPS production the rest of the year, I think where his numbers lie currently should be sustainable. Javi Baez, something I wanted to bring up was some weird batting stance mechanics. This was actually brought to my attention from a buddy of mine from Gavin, who is a great follow on Twitter for Tigers and Detroit sports stuff. Lions _ Super Bowl, I think, is still his Twitter at. But he pointed out and was tweeting about the Javi Baez batting stance and how on Saturday Baez had a pretty dreadful game at the plate, kind of looked lost up there. And on Sunday, got a hit, couple RBIs, looked a little more comfortable in there. And on Saturday, he just randomly didn't have the same set before, like his same set stance before, loading and getting ready for a swing that he had during the hot stretch. So that was something that was pretty fascinating to me. We'll kind of keep an eye on that and see. But yeah, Gavin pointed that out. And it really was on Sunday, again, seeing him get hits, that was a great sign to see him go back to what was working. I'm not really sure why he changed in the first place, but clearly someone pointed it out to him and he made adjustments accordingly. Who else? Nick Maton continues to just have zero ability to hit any non-fastball. It's the scouting report. Saying the scouting report is out is an understatement. You have dudes that are throwing like only fastballs all game, and then get to him and just throw him 5 straight curveballs or change ups, and he can just do absolutely nothing with them. Looking at his numbers on the year, just the difference in splits, still 70th percentile in barrel percentage, but that doesn't take into account the amount of times he just goes up to the plate and just doesn't put the ball in play. Still walking a good amount, still working counts, but it just doesn't matter when you have zero proof and zero evidence that you can hit non-fastballs. Breaking pitches on the year, he has 4 hits. He has 4 hits on breaking balls, 3 singles and a double, and he has 0 hits recorded on all off-speed pitches. So there you go. A 0 batting average on off-speed, a 111 on breaking balls, and even the fastball batting average at this point is only 220. The slug is good, but not great. So I don't want to have the full conversation right now because we're toward the end of the show and whatnot. We don't have enough time, but we will have to have the conversation of like what to do with him at some point, because he has to have an option, right? I think he only has 1 year of major league service. I would imagine he has an option, but we'll do more in depth and take a look at kind of what to do with him. But it has not been good over the last several weeks now, and at some point you're going to have to make a change. And at some point, Justin Henry Malloy is going to have to get a call up, because that dude is absolutely mashing in Toledo right now, like otherworldly numbers. And so I don't know if it's you just DFA Scope, or we have the conversation about Maton. He gets optioned, whatever. But like there is, in the conversation we had earlier about how there's no pitchers waiting in the wings, there are hitters. That there are specifically one. His name is Justin Henry Malloy. So that is something we're going to have to keep a close eye on. But yeah, Maton, his struggles very loudly continue. Team defense this weekend was, wow, I almost just dropped an F-bomb. That was really close. Was absolutely awful. I can't even express how close of a call that was. That was really, really close to having to do some editing there. It was dreadful. That was the first 2 games especially, zero help defensively. Say what you will about the pitching performances this weekend. It's probably justified outside of Faedo. If you have weird things to say about Faedo, I don't know what to tell you. But not great defensively. And I have given this team defense a ton of credit this season, because the data says, and the eye test for most games, say that this team has been a pretty plus contributor defensively as a unit. But golly, do they make some just boneheaded mistakes sometimes. Can we learn how to throw to a cutoff man? Golly. I mean, it's crazy, because this is something that, like, dating back to, when was the first time I lost my mind about that? The Boston series? I think it was Boston. The Red Sox home opening series. Riley Green did the same thing, and it allowed a base runner to advance. You can't do that. And then Badu did it again over the weekend. You can't. Just very, very infuriating stuff. And then just some like balls just popping out of mitts, and very, very frustrating. A rundown. We just forgot how a rundown works. Pitcher's not covering the bag. Will Vest, who's been really solid this season, not a great look there. Just really, really rough weekend defensively. And again, like dating back to the what was it, the bottom of the sixth and the Cardinals finale when the team defense just completely went down the drain. That's I don't want to say outlier because like those are what, a week, 10 days apart. So it's not really like it never happens. But as long as it's not the norm, I'll live. But don't make it the norm. Don't. Or else I'm going to pop a blood vessel on air one day. We need to keep those very few and far between. So that was something else I wanted to address. Not very good. We'll end on a high note, though, and that is the bullpen. Nothing was very good on Friday and Saturday. Tyler Alexander has not been very great this season and gave up some more runs. But outside of him, and especially on Sunday, this team really has proven the ability to do a great job at limiting damage, like damage control bullpen. This team is getting like an A or an A plus so far on the season. Because if a starter gets lit up early and you're like, oh boy, it's going to be one of those games, the Tigers, time and time again this year, if you look at their wins, have a reliever goes out there, the bullpen combined throws 6 innings of shutout ball, and the Tigers very slowly chip away at a lead and then win it late. And that's exactly what happened on Sunday. And we've seen that 4 or 5 times, maybe even more this season, right? Oh, Tigers down 4-0. Oh, well, they won 6-4. Like that's hasn't been uncommon. So this bullpen deserves a lot of credit. There's some dudes individually as well whose season numbers are getting lower and lower. Jose Cisnero, for as much heat as he got, rightfully so, though, at the beginning of the year, his ERA is now like approaching sub 3, which, again, given where he started out, I think is a pretty big accomplishment. He's been pretty solid as of late. Mason Inglert's ERA is approaching, well, going down, approaching sub 4 as well. He continues to be a really solid multi-inning option. Jason Foley has been stellar, 1.56 ERA. Alex Lang's ERA is almost sub 1 now. He has a 1.06 ERA on the year. And then Chasen Shreve, ERA now under 5. I know that's still high, but after the Baltimore series, it really blew up, and it's kind of slowly been coming back down to earth ever since. That inning he threw on Sunday is by far the best outing he's had of his entire season. So yeah, like there's actually some dogs in here, and I said it on the first day of May, right, when we were talking about what this team needs to do to sustain their success. Well, and last week, right? They need somebody to step up and be a legitimate threat outside of Lang and Foley. And it looks like we're heading in a direction where that could be possible. So great to see there. I think that's it. Yeah, Tyler Alexander, like we'll see what happens. They need innings out of the pen, and he can provide those. But with dudes like Englert, who are able to go multiple innings as well, I don't know, righty lefty, having a lefty in the pen's also very important. I'm not saying Alexander's going anywhere, but he's going to have to start stepping up and getting his stuff together as well. So yeah, like not a great weekend. I hope I didn't come across as like too much of a homer, as like, oh, Sunday saved the weekend and that's it. Like it wasn't great. It was pretty awful actually at times. But the difference between a sweep and dropping 2 of 3 is massive over the course of a season. I love ending series on a win. Let's go into Pittsburgh. We'll go into the off day first, then go not into Pittsburgh, against Pittsburgh rather, and try and take 2 from them. We always play 2-game series against Pittsburgh. It's so weird to me. And then after Pittsburgh, then you get a really, really, really favorable schedule. Pittsburgh, who again has been awful in May, we'll preview them tomorrow. Then you have Washington, Kansas City, Chicago White Sox. 3 of the worst teams in baseball. Let's make it happen. Hey, why not? Thank you for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll be back tomorrow, like I said, doing an episode, kind of just looking at where some of the big decisions made in the offseason, where those pieces are. and how they are doing, and if the decisions still hold up. We'll obviously take a look at Jamer, some players like that. So, yeah, that'll be tomorrow's show. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all then, baby. Go Tigers.